I know it might be a little early for some of you, but if you're going to be making some fall decorations or selling stuff, you've got to start now so that you're ready when it's time to put things out. I've got a collection of fall DIYs of all variety in today's video, and I hope that you enjoy it. Let's get started. First up, I have a sign that is from the Dollar Tree, and it's been painted white, just painting over whatever that decor piece is. You can take the paper off if you need to. Anyways, I'm gonna paint it, and then I'm going to give it a good coat of Mod Podge all the way around. We are going to, I didn't really have to paint the Mod Podge on the edges, but some of it got over there, so that's why I was just smoothing it out. We are going to be working with some fabric here from the Dollar Tree, and we are going to use the iron-on method. So this works great with fabric, and you're just going to let your Mod Podge fully dry, place your fabric down, and then using parchment paper and an iron with no steam, and you're going to go over that, and that will reactivate your Mod Podge and help your fabric stick to the surface. I'm doing just a little bit at a time on the edges to make sure I got it in place. I didn't want it to shift, so I just kind of started with the edges and then worked my way across. This method is super great. You get no wrinkles, and it works out very, very well. So I'm just cutting it very closely to the edge with my scissors. You can use a knife. I didn't like an X-Acto knife. I did not want to cut it ahead of time because, I don't know, I just didn't want to. So this is how I did it. But you do you. I just was very, very careful to get all the way to the edge. When you are using Mod Podge and this method, make sure that you go all the way to the edge. Don't skimp. You want to do a hefty coat, let it fully dry, and then you're going to proceed with the fabric, parchment paper, and the iron. So once I got it, the last of it cleaned up there, I did just kind of go back over the edge and iron that down to make sure it was stuck down nice and solid. Now this fabric is pretty busy, so we're going to keep any embellishments to a minimum, but I'm going to take this ribbon from the Dollar Tree and I'm going to do this around the edge. I didn't do the bottom because I didn't want it to affect its ability to stand up, but this adds a little bit of detail. It also covers a hole that was in the sign. Just, I think it was probably like a string with some beads on it. I don't even remember, from the Dollar Tree. And so this helps cover that up too. I didn't use a lot of hot glue, as you can see, just kind of on the corners, and just pulled the ribbon nice and taut. And this just gives a little bit of detail. This wood word came from Dollar Tree, I believe, in a pack of multiples, but Hobby Lobby has similar things. And I'm using a furniture marker from the Dollar Tree to paint this, to stain it, whatever you want to call it. This is a very handy way to do that, but you can paint it or stain it or use one of these markers. You can use a paint pen. But Hello Autumn, I'm just going to keep this really simple. I'm just going with a brown here because, like I said, this fabric was really busy and I didn't want to add too much else onto it so that it wasn't like being overdone. So we're just going to put a little bit of hot glue across kind of like the main spots. It's always hard with these wood words to get hot glue to make sure it doesn't like come out the bottom, but just put some on and attach that. I wanted to put that at the top. I liked the way that looked, and I also didn't want to cover up the entire wagon. And then I'm using this little sharp tool to just pick away any hot glue that did come out the sides while it was still pretty soft, and that just cleaned it up really well without ruining anything. Just do it while the glue is still a little soft. And that is it for this sign. Really simple, but it is so bright and fun and vibrant, which I do like incorporating a little bit more color in my seasonal decor, more so than I do in my everyday decor. Up next, I'm just going to do something that I already had in my stash. This metal milk can is, I think, from Dollar General, but it's just something I've had in my stash. So I'm going to just wrap this pretty fabric. This is another busy fabric, but this is from the Dollar Tree as well. And I'm just going to hot glue it to the can. So I'm kind of just eyeballing it and measuring it. And one thing that's really great about this is that, one, it's easy, it's very quick to do. And I'm not putting a lot of glue. I was so mad at myself here because I really did not. I should have measured it. Guys should measure it. I did not, and almost thought I wasn't going to be able to do it, but I was able to stretch the fabric a little bit and make it work. But the cool thing is I'm not having to use a ton of hot glue, and so if I want to take this fabric off at the end of the fall season, I can do that, and I'm just left with my plain metal can again. So just wanted to mention that. So I'm just going to glue this on. I'm going to trim off the bottom edge. And you could have just, I guess I could have just measured the whole thing and cut it out, but this is the way I decided to do it. So I looked at this can and thought, is this all I want to do, or do I want to add something else? So I wanted to add just a little something. Again, busy fabric, didn't want to overdo it. So I have this raffia ribbon. I wrapped that around a few times up at the top and just wrapped it around like 3 or 4 times, tied a bow, and then making my bow, I had the little tails on the bow, and I wanted to just make them look a little bit nicer. So I trimmed them down, and then I just took a marker that I had on hand and wrapped it around it. Probably would be helpful to dampen this, but this actually worked without doing that. And then I just went over it with my heat gun just for a short bit, and that helped me get this to be nice and curly Q. And this was really, really good. I have this in real time right now, but I'll speed it up or cut some of this out for you. But very easy to do, and I loved the outcome. And then I just went into my scraps of floral pieces. I think this is boxwood from Walmart, so nothing super fancy. You could put some fall florals in there, but so much color was on this that I just wanted to keep it simple up top. But let me know what you think of this one down below. This was super, super quick to do, and I love it. Up next, I have a book. This is in my craft stash. You can get these at thrift stores. You can get these at the thrift stores. You can get them at Dollar Tree. But this is a soft cover book, and I did cover it with paint because I didn't want any of the writing to show through the fabric. So do with that what you will. You could also tear off the cover and just try to use it straight onto the pages, but I still feel like the writing could come through on the fabric. So I'm very careful on the edges so they don't get paint on the paper itself, on the pages, but we're gonna give this, I ended up giving it 2 coats of Waverly chalk paint in the color white. So we have just a plain white book here, and once that was all dry, I'm gonna go in with a good coat of Mod Podge. Once again, we're gonna put this all across it, trying not to get it on the pages at all, but making sure you go all the way to the edge. We're gonna once again do our iron-on method with some fabric. So we're gonna do a fabric covered book, and this is such a fun way to make over a book. You're not really destroying it. I mean, I guess in some ways you are. If this is something you struggle with, then I'm sorry. But there's a lot of times books at thrift stores and the Dollar Tree that more or less may end up in the dump. So I feel like you're rescuing it from the landfill, and this is a great way to incorporate it into your home decor if it doesn't have the outer appearance of one you want for your decor. This fabric is so pretty. I got this at Walmart in their clearance aisle, and it's not necessarily a fall fabric, but the pattern or the colors of it is very fall-like. So I thought it was perfect. So I'm going to once again be lining this up and just doing the edges a little bit at a time to make sure that it stays in place. And then once I get it started, we can just freely go over the whole book without worrying about moving it around. If you're new to my channel, I just want to say hey and welcome. My name is Leanne. I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs on this channel, whether that's Dollar Tree, thrift flips, whatever. There's all different ways you can make them on a budget, but I love sharing those on my channel. And if you're new here, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave so you don't miss out on my future videos. As I was doing this first part here, I was kind of pulling the fabric. Maybe you could see that from the left-hand side. I didn't want to stretch the fabric and make the pattern crooked, but I did want to make sure it was tight. And I did get a little bit of wrinkles here, and you can still lift up the fabric, especially while it's still warm, and then just reapply it. So that's what I'm doing here. I went in for a second with just the iron, and I was like, no, don't risk something getting on your iron. Use the parchment paper. But I'm just trying to smooth out some of those wrinkles. So it can be a little bit harder with like a bigger piece. You want to go bit by bit. But in the end, this was great. Around the binding of the book, I did go pull that nice and tight and just kind of work my way down because I didn't want it to wrinkle or bubble at all. This handy iron is from HTV Ront, and I love having this. You can also use your Cricut iron, but you can also use your iron for just like your regular household iron. Just make sure you don't have any steam. Now to trim off the edges, I didn't really want to risk messing it up with trying to use sandpaper. I wasn't really sure. I have done that with fabric before, but what I did was just elevated the book on something else so that the fabric was hanging down so that I could get close to the edge. And then I ended up kind of doing it this way. I didn't want to cut the paper because it's like a paperback book, so like it'd be easy to cut the cover, but I just took my time and went nice and close, and this ended up working out really, really good, especially when I did it this way where I opened up the book and laid it down. I wanted to do a little bit of embellishment on the book, not a ton, but just a little bit. So I have this wood tag in my stash. I think a friend gave this to me, and a wood burning tool from Walmart. I got this for Christmas, but I know it's from Walmart because I asked my husband for it, and I haven't used it a lot. It is a little scary because it's very, very hot. You need to be careful, but there's a little guard here for where you're holding it, and I am just using kind of like the fine tip writing tool, and I kind of went, you can see, I went over it initially just lightly, or like to get the outline of the letter, and then went back in and took my time. The longer you hold it in place, the more it burns it, so you have to be careful. You don't want to burn all the way through. You just kind of get a hang of it. I mean, I don't fully have a hang of it. I've only used it a couple of times, but I've been wanting to use it more, and I like this rustic farmhousey look. So I just decided, trying to talk too fast, to write the word fall, and I did do all capitals because I thought I might mess up the A if I did a lowercase a and trying to do a curved line. So I kept it simple for me. I'm using some jute twine, wrapping that around just a couple times. This is actually a thicker jute cord that I have, jute twine, and I just am using like half of the strands because it's a little thicker than I wanted. And we're just going to wrap this around a couple times and tie it in a knot. I didn't do a bow or anything. And then I wasn't sure how I wanted to do the tag. First, I thought I would tie it all the way up at the top, and then I was like, no, I kind of want it to be dangling down. So what I did was I tied the twine in a knot, and then at the end of one of those pieces that was hanging down, I just tied it in a knot towards the top or back of that. And that was it. That was all I did for that. You could also add some florals or something, but this is going to be really nice to layer in with my fall decor. And I just thought that was a fun, nice little touch. So let me know what you think. Have you ever wrapped any books with fabric in this way for decor, not for just like your school books? For this one, we're going to use some scrap pieces of fabric just to kind of use up some of what I've got. And I'm using a wood cutout. This is from Hobby Lobby, but Dollar Tree does have similar ones. And I'm just going to cut out some fabric pieces. We're going to make some little bowl fillers, or I'm going to use mine in something else. I will show you at the end how I'm styling it. But I'm going to make 2 in each pattern, and I do ultimately go back and cut out some more in using some like canvas material or drop cloth material, I think it is. But I am just going to trace out the pumpkin, and I'm going to then stack them and cut the fabric. Now, this is a little learning curve. First of all, I decided to not use the stem of my pumpkin because we're going to do something else there. So I'm just drawing a little curved line, and I do use some pins to pin. I didn't want to do all of it at once, but I did a few at once. I don't have fabric scissors, but the scissors I have are newer, so they're pretty sharp, and I didn't have any problems. I also don't mind a little frayed edge in my material. This idea was brought to me by my friend Favi. Her channel, if you are not familiar, is Arrows DIY, and I was just talking about fabric. I don't know where why the conversation started, but she had suggested some little pumpkin bowl fillers, and I love that idea. I've been doing those for the last few seasons. I did one for like patriotic decor and for fall or for Valentine's Day, but I did it totally different with yarn. It was with yarn, so I love the idea of doing the fabric ones. But here's when I realized that when I took these pumpkins back to back, like opened them up, I'm like, the pumpkin's not symmetrical. So I had to do some additional trimming on this. But the reason I didn't fold over the fabric to cut it out was because I wanted to pay attention to where the pattern was at. I don't know if I'm making sense. I think I show you when I did the canvas ones. But it's okay. I just trimmed it up. It was fine. Thank you, Favi, for this idea. These came out so cute. So I'm excited to show you guys how this all worked out. So I just took some hot glue. I did speed this up for you, and just put hot glue around the edge. I didn't want to stitch it. I don't really do that super great anyway. And so I just put a little bit of hot glue around the edge all the way, except for I left a little opening up at the top. But this is a super quick and easy way to make these little tiny pumpkin pillows. But I'm using them as like a little bowl filler. The other thing is I had these little cotton balls, and I've had a little bit left in my bag in my craft stuff forever, and I'm glad that the bag's gone. I used the rest of them. I used about 4 small cotton balls in each one of these, and I just tore them up so that there weren't any hard clumps. That makes them go like further and just be fluffier. So you can also use some scrap fabric, you could use tissues, but I'm gonna use these little cotton balls. And then I wanted to use a little jute cord or jute twine for my stem. So I'm hot gluing that in and then hot gluing the top of it. And then we'll finish hot gluing up around the rest of the edges. And this I thought was cute because it just made it look a little bit different, and it added a little bit of texture, but it was still soft. These are great if you have them out where kids can reach them. You don't have to worry about anything breaking or poking or anything like that. And trimmed that off. So that was it for that one. I did want to show you the canvas drop. I think this was a drop cloth. I'm sorry, I don't even know. But I'm tracing it. And what I did here, which is what would have worked better probably for that, for the pattern fabric, is it just folded over on itself. So I still could only do 2 at once, but that meant that it was exactly how I needed it and the right shape was there. So I hope that's making sense, but I wanted to show you this one because even though that didn't matter because there was no pattern, I still wanted you guys to be able to see it. And then I flipped it over so that any pen marks were on the inside if I didn't trim off all of, all of the pen. And so we're gonna glue that and you get the idea. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. It lets YouTube know that you're enjoying my videos, and it makes them more likely to share my videos with someone else. Also, if you're subscribed, please make sure you turn on the notification bell because YouTube is kind of picky about that. If you don't have the notification bell on, they might not tell you when I post a video. So I didn't want to do a lot of embellishments, but I did add a couple little bows. So I had this brown and white like baker's twine kind of thing. I made a double bow, put that across the top of the orange one, a simple tiny little twine bow for this kind of busier patterned fabric. And then for the plain one, I'll trim off the tails here. And then for the super plain one, I just picked a leaf off of a piece of greenery, just a single leaf, hot glued that down, and then a little simple bow with an orange and white baker's twine, just for a little added color for this more neutral one. And that was all I did. I didn't put the bows on all of them just so you could see what they both looked like. But then also, because of how I'm styling them in this little metal truck, I knew that the ones behind you wouldn't be able to see them anyway, so I didn't worry about it. But I thought this was super cute. Thank you, Favi, for the idea. I love how these came out, and it used up a lot of scraps that I had around. First up, I have this sign that I picked up from Hobby Lobby a while back. I thought it was really cute with the little details. It was, I was just showing you that it can hang up on the wall, and I paid $1.49 for it, and I've been hanging on to it. I originally thought I was going to make some type of tray out of it, but then I had an idea. So we're going to paint the bottom. I'm just painting it with some white. I don't need a full coat because we're going to actually be covering it with some fabric, but I wanted to just make sure that the words like wouldn't peek through the fabric at all. So I didn't even go all the way up to the edge you can see with the paint. And yeah, so we're just going to give that a basic little base coat. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name is Leanne, and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I do a lot of Dollar Tree, but I also do like Hobby Lobby clearance or thrifted items. Just try to keep it budget-friendly. And I also like to stick my head in front of the camera to make it lose focus, but don't worry, the important stuff is in focus. So at this point, I'm just using stuff I had in my stash, and I had this really fun fabric from Dollar Tree last year, but you can find fabric at a lot of places, and I'm just going in with some Mod Podge. My Mod Podge is down to the bottom of the barrel, therefore I'm picking out a lot of like goopy chunks. So anyways, we're just gonna put a nice coat of that around the whole thing. I'm trying to go pretty thick. I'm trying to get really into the corners and the edges, but we are going to go ahead and do a top coat as well. So we're just going to spread that out all over. And then I'm just lining up the fabric and we're gonna smooth that down, just trying to make sure that it is nice and straight so that the image isn't going crooked. And I'm just going to smooth that out. Try not to pull on the fabric because with the moisture of the Mod Podge, you don't wanna like stretch the fabric. So I was trying to not shift it at all, but I am using, this is like a rubber scraper tool from Mod Podge, from Plaid, the company that creates Mod Podge or sells Mod Podge. And I'm using that to push in the corners, but I'm trying to not like pull on the fabric to stretch it out. Just pushing it in there so that the corners and the edges are in there nice and good. I know here it kind of looks like the fabric is crooked, but it's actually not. So yeah, so I'm just gonna smooth that out very gently. And then I let that dry. It wasn't fully dry at this point, and I'm using just a sharp cutting tool and I'm going along and cutting that. It probably would have been easier if I let it dry all the way because there was a couple places where it wanted to pull. Plus, I doubt this tool is as sharp as it could be. I have another one with changeable blades and I can't figure out how to get the old blade out to put the new ones in. I probably need to ask for my husband's help in that. But anyways, I'm just going along. You could have also probably cut it first if you wanted, but I felt like I would get a better edge this way, and I would get a better fit. But you could do this however you wanted, but you could certainly recreate something like this with other similar pieces. I just kind of went slow and took my time. I didn't want to rush it and mess it up, but it did take a little bit of time for me to get this done properly and completely. Here I am just using this like putty tool to kind of push down because I had a hard time getting in the corners, cutting the corners off, and that kind of helped me keep my fingers out of the way, but pushing down the fabric while I did it. While I cut it, I should say. And then I'm going in with some Mod Podge and I'm going to do a nice thick coat on top. And you can see with the edges, I'm just tapping it because if I pulled it, the bottom was still a little bit wet and I didn't want to move the fabric. So I just kind of stippled it almost, just tapped it in around the edges and gave a nice coat on the whole thing. But I did emphasize the corners and the edges to make sure that that was stuck down really well. And then you definitely want to let this dry thoroughly. Now I've got these wooden planks. These are from the Dollar Tree. I think they come in like a 4 or 5 pack. And I'm just watering down some white paint to do a whitewash on this. I actually ended up doing 2 planks. I'm only showing you one because one plank is going to be for the next DIY. But while I had everything out, I went ahead and did them both. And I'm just thinning out the paint. I wanted to still kind of see some of the wood grain through, but I don't know. So yeah, whitewash, brushing it on and then wiping it off with a paper towel. And on this one I did the front, back, and sides, and I didn't really need to do the back, but that's okay. That's what I did. I was so excited to pull out my fall stash and remember that I picked up some of these transfers from Dollar Tree last year, and they show it being used on a glass, but you don't need to do that. So here I am centering that on our wooden plank, and these are very sticky. Like the transfer paper sheet is very sticky compared to the other ones, but it transferred fairly easily here. I just had a couple spots I had to go back and rub again, so just make sure you pull it off slowly. And we're gonna attach that to our sign. I'm using some wood blocks with some hot glue to elevate the sign. I just thought that would be kind of cool instead of attaching it straight flat. We're gonna make like I don't know what to call it, but I'm gonna show you. And then I pulled out some different pumpkins I had in my stash. I believe they're all from Dollar Tree. And the 2 oranges, at first I wasn't sure because I'm like, oh, they don't like go together. And then I was like, looked at the fabric and I was like, there's definitely these 2 colored pumpkins together on the fabric. So these ones had a little clip on them. So I was just cutting that off, and I am going to make a little assemblage. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but we're gonna just stack our pumpkins. We're gonna make it look kind of like at a little harvest scene. So I've got a variety of pumpkins in 2 different shades of orange and white, and like 3 or 4 different sizes. And I'm just playing with this until I like it. I kind of lifted up the back side. This could be hung on the wall because this one does come with a hanger,
but in the end, I'll show you it actually stands up by itself as well. Dollar Tree has a lot of like small square shadow box type things. You could do something similar, but in a smaller form. I have also in my stash were these corn husks from Hobby Lobby from last year. They were originally $5.99. I know I didn't pay, I at least only paid 50%, but my guess is I picked these up at the end of the season for like at least 75% off is my guess. But there's a ton in here, so it's a good buy. Even if you bought it now at like the 40% off, I'm sure they have them again this year. And I'm just pulling off different pieces of them and tucking them in wherever I think it looks good. I'm using a little metal hook tool you can see to kind of help, see my head keeps going in there. I'm using that to just kind of push down so that the hot glue adheres down in there. And we're just gonna add corn husks and pumpkins and just keep rearranging until we have a cute little pumpkin patch. That's what we're doing. We got a cute little pumpkin patch. And I know the fabric is really busy, so I wasn't really sure what to do, but I liked that the words were on the white plank because that kind of, separates it a little bit. And I love that it's like a 3D thing. And anyways, I don't know. I just really thought this was a cute idea. So let me know what you should think. And I did not plan any of this. I mean, I didn't buy anything with this in mind. I did plan this before I started doing it. But I just kind of used what I had and it worked out perfectly. And then I did decide to seal in the rub-on transfer. It was a little bit sticky and I don't know, I just figured it'd be easier to clean. It would look nicer this way. And this is how it came out. I thought it was pretty cute. And I love that it just kind of stands up by itself, but it could also be hung up on the wall. And you could do this in a different size or shape using something from the Dollar Tree or the thrift store. But don't overlook those clearance items from Hobby Lobby either. For our next DIY, I have this pumpkin sign. It is from the Dollar Tree last year, and I'm just going to take off the twine hanger. And I wanted to show you both sides. It's got a beautiful coloring, beautiful texture, but it is kind of like chippy. It's got like this raw wood. And so I decided to protect it by using some matte Mod Podge, hoping that would keep it from like flaking off while I was working with it. So I Mod Podged both sides of this and I tried to get a little bit on the edge. Now I started out this DIY planning to do just one side of it, but in the end I was like, wait a minute, why don't I make this a double-sided sign? So I did both sides, two very different looks. So you could do one or the other, or you could also do both, or just use this for basic DIY inspiration. If you are enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up, say hello in the comments, and if you're new, I would love it if you would consider subscribing before you leave and make sure you turn your notification bell on. But all of those little interactions let YouTube know that you're enjoying my video and makes them more likely to share my video with others. So once the Mod Podge was all dried is when I decided that I was going to do the other side. So originally I was just using the dark side, but now I wanted to use the light side with this fabric. And this is more fabric from the Dollar Tree that I had picked up last year. And I'm going to do the iron-on method. I believe, okay, so I'm throwing some parchment paper on top and then ironing with no steam and on I don't even know what setting I had it on, but this will reactivate the Mod Podge. Had I planned to do with this ahead of time, I would have done a little bit of a thicker layer of Mod Podge on this, but it still ended up working in the end. But this here is in real time. I'm just taking my time, making sure to go over all of the edges and let that Mod Podge reactivate and heat up the, or what am I trying to say? Reactivate the Mod Podge and adhere the fabric. Now, this would have been great for the first DIY too, but I didn't think I could get into the corners of the sign, which is why I didn't use this method. But this really does help with fabric, especially, and I'm not having any wrinkles. So I'm now trying to trim this off my little rotary blade, I was having trouble. This was another struggle bus for me, but it's probably just due to not having great tools. And I know that I believe you could sand off the fabric, but I wasn't really sure how that would work. But I do end up going to that in just a second here. I trimmed off most of it with my cutting tool, and then I went in with a nail file, or you could use sandpaper, and you go away with it so that you don't pull up on the fabric. But the problem is, because of this material being a little bit rougher, like I showed in the beginning of it, I was feeling like I was gonna mess up the wood planks. Anyways, I decided that I needed to put another coat of Mod Podge on top, and then once that was dry and everything was hard, I went back in with my nail file to smooth out any of the other edges. I just felt like the edges were starting to fray a little bit. So overall, you really honestly can't tell, but I just wanted to take you through the process that I went through. So now it is all dry, and this was my original intention with these pieces here. The Welcome Fall came in a word pack from the Dollar Tree, and then the little trucks came in a pack from Hobby Lobby. Several of them were in the pack. I'm using this wood glue super glue and just trying to very carefully apply this to whatever open space I can find. I should have used a glue that dries clear. This does not dry clear, I don't believe. So as I'm pushing on this and it starts oozing out around the letters, I'm like, oh, I don't know that I need to clean that up. So I held it down really well so that it didn't move while it was drying, and went in with a paper towel to wipe out any excess. I don't have a fine tip hot glue gun, so I knew I couldn't go that route, but I should have just used a different glue. This glue stuck really well, but there was such a small space to try to get the glue on. So when it came around the edges, I didn't want it to be seen once it was all dry. So clean that up, and then I used a little bit of that glue and a little bit of hot glue on the truck, just since there was a little bit bigger of a surface to work with, and attach one of those to either side of the Welcome Fall. And now I am attaching some jute cord or jute twine to the top around the stem, and I'm just using a good amount of glue and kind of twisting the jute cord to keep it a tight twist as I go around it. And this jute cord, I don't think I show it to you in this video, is a huge, gigantic spool that I found at a thrift store. I think it was originally from Hobby Lobby for like $25, and it was brand new in packaging at a thrift store for like $6. So I'm gonna be using it. And lots of hot glue here at the end to just try to cover up the whole thing, and the top is kind of the hardest, especially to not burn yourself. So I'm just using some tools to help push that down while the glue dries. So that looks great for both sides. So now I'm going in with a lighter to just kind of burn off any extras and any little glue hanging around. And then I'm taking these leaf cutouts. This is not a fall item. This is just a Dollar Tree Crafter Square item. I ended up switching out to this more unique looking leaf. I thought that was kind of more fun and whimsical, and a little bit of glue, and we're attaching that to this side. And now I didn't want this to be a hanging sign. I wanted to have a base. So we're gonna take some Jenga blocks and that other wood plank that I told you about in the beginning that I made 2 of, and I'm using some of the wood glue and some hot glue and attaching some Jenga blocks. And I just keep standing it up to make sure that the Jenga blocks are going to be flush with the base. And then we're going to attach these to the base, and then we'll add more Jenga blocks to the reverse side. So hopefully that all makes sense. And then we're going to cover this up so it doesn't matter that they're not painted. Now I'm going in with some of this moss, this darker colored moss from Dollar Tree, and I'm just putting tons of hot glue. Be very careful to not burn yourself, and lots of moss, and I'm just going all the way around both sides. On the edge, I tried to make sure I was covering up like the edges of the Jenga blocks on the end pieces, just so that you couldn't see any of that. And I just kind of figured like go heavier with it and then trim it off like I'm doing here with the scissors. And I really liked the way that this looked. So I've got one side here that's a little bit more bright and whimsical, and then the other side, which is a little bit more rustic and farmhouse. So you can either choose which side or use this maybe on a kitchen island where you would be seeing both sides. Let me know what you think of these. These are so fun. Up first, I have a couple of these ceramic pumpkins. They are originally from the Dollar Tree. I had previously painted them, and when I was pulling out my fall decor, I pulled out a few things that I didn't really like anymore. Instead of getting rid of them, I decided to redo them. I have this fabric scrap from the Dollar Tree, and I wanted to do some coordinating things with the fabric for the pumpkins. So you'll see it all come together in a minute. So I mixed up a couple of yellows I had that I thought matched the yellow in the fabric pretty well. So we're going to paint one of the pumpkins with that. This took a couple of coats, but these pumpkins were previously painted and probably Mod Podged. So it just took a couple of coats, and plus this was just acrylic paint. But I love to mix up my own colors to coordinate with what I'm trying to do. And this is fun because then you can kind of change up some of your decor each year if you want. When you're just making it yourself, you know, it's easy to do that on a budget. Just change it up if you get bored. So that's what I'm doing. So we're doing another one in a coordinating blue. I had not mixed that paint very well, and there was a lot of liquid in there, so cleaning that out. But I was, once again, trying to coordinate the blue that was in the material I had shown you, and we're going to paint the other pumpkin in that blue color. But it was a little too blue, so I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a color artist major, but I knew that it needed a little bit of green. I do remember some things, you know, from art in elementary school, right? So anyways, I just mixed up my colors, just using what I had on hand. Didn't buy anything for these. This is a craft my stash, use what I have, making over some things that I already have on hand. And it's a great way to do some decor on a budget. So we're going to give this one I think only took 2 coats, just because, I don't know why, but it didn't take quite as many. But you can do any color scheme that you want and just match your own decor. These pumpkins do have a little bit of a carved indentation there. You could go back and highlight them if you wanted, but I really just wanted like the simple color, but you can still see the etching in there. I used my heat gun to dry it in between. That just helps speed it up, especially the bottom, so that I could set that down, because I didn't want the whole thing painted, because I wanted it to look like it was originally this color. And then I did go in with some brown paint and painted the stem of the pumpkin. I am really, I've said this a lot in my videos, so sorry for the repetitiveness if you've been watching, but craft my stash and work through my stuff. So I have lots of paint that's like almost done, and I'm kind of just choosing stuff based on what needs to be used up at times. I'm wanting to throw out some of these bottles of paints, so I just used whatever color brown I had on hand. I would really like to get a new chalk paint in brown, but not until I use up some of this other paint that I have on hand. So brown stem and coordinating colors for another piece that we're going to be making later in this video. These pumpkins will be a great accent. If you're new to my channel, I just want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Leanne, and I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel. I do a lot of Dollar Tree, but also Hobby Lobby clearance, thrift flips, whatever I've got that's on a budget. I love sharing those with you. So for these pumpkins, I decided to seal this in with my clear wax by Waverly. Once again, it's almost gone, and I'm trying to use it up, but so is my Mod Podge, so I'm trying to just use up these bottles. So the clear wax is great. You're supposed to brush it on and then let it, I think, dry and then buff it out. I had to buff it a little bit because I was in a hurry to get these done, and I needed to set the bottom down. I did want to seal the bottom because, you know, this is going to be on the surfaces, and I didn't want, you know, when I set it on a shelf or whatever, and I didn't want it to chip off. But I did let the rest of the wax dry for a little bit before I grabbed it and buffed it out. I did use a paper towel. You can also use like a lint-free cloth, which is probably better than using a paper towel, which is what I usually do, but I didn't this time. Anyways, I did let it dry just a little bit, buffed it out, and then I did go back like the next day and buffed it again. Anyways, all right, we're going to move on to a little bit of embellishment. I have this burlap leaf. This is from the Dollar Tree. It originally came on like a metal stem of some kind, which honestly just came off them super easy. It had fallen off it on its own. But I'm going to trim off part of this oak leaf to make little leaves for my pumpkins. I just thought that would be a really fun embellishment. So just a little itty bitty leaf. Careful not to burn yourself. I use a little tool to kind of press that down because obviously it'll come through the burlap. And then I'm just going to tie on a little raffia. I tied it first because I thought it would be easier. And I'm tying it around the base of the stem, and so I needed to use some hot glue, otherwise the raffia would just keep riding up on the stem. So I did just a little bit of hot glue around the base, and that just kind of helped secure it in place to give the look I wanted. But you could use some yarn, some twine, some ribbon, some scrap fabric. Use whatever you've got. That is my motto. I had just kind of wrapped this around so I had little loops on the end. Oh, I did put a little glue in the knot because and then I cut off the loops and trimmed it down. I didn't want to double knot it to secure it on there because I thought that would be too bulky with the raffia. So I just put some glue in there. And then I grabbed a little pine cone. I think this is from a vase filler from Dollar Tree. It was actually in my decor, like inside of a lantern, but I just grabbed a couple of them and pulled them out. And I did trim down the end a little bit with my wire cutters just to make it lay a little bit flatter. And then I decided I wanted just a little bit more raffia there, so I just put some more hot glue and tucked it in. But you're just going to use whatever you've got. Just use the things you've got. But this is how my pumpkins came out, and I love these colors. It's not my typical colors that I use for fall, but you're going to see why I went this route here in just a second. And it's fun to change up your decor. So I have this wood piece. This is from the Dollar Tree. It was previously used. I did sand it down. But it's just one of those like house-shaped pieces from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to apply some Mod Podge. I'm trying to not get it on the edges because I don't want anything to accidentally stick to the edges. So we're going to give this a very good coat of Mod Podge because we're going to be adhering some fabric. Now, I often show you the iron-on method for fabric, and you can do that, and that would work great on the wood, but I didn't this time just because I didn't. It was a pretty easy piece to work with. The fabric here is really easy to work with. I didn't have a lot of trouble or any trouble with wrinkling, but the iron-on method is also a really great option. And for some materials, it works a lot better, but I didn't have any problems this way. So we're just going to go apply a very, very thick layer of Mod Podge on top of the fabric as well. And then we're going to let that completely dry. When it completely dries, it will become very hard and it'll be a lot easier to trim our fabric piece down. So just make sure you go all the way to the edges. When you do this, it's very important so that you have a nice firm line to trim it down with. So that's what I'm doing. Now it is all dry. You can see through it a little bit. You can see the wood color. You could paint it way underneath if you wanted, but that wasn't bothering me. And I'm trimming it down. I'm just using scissors. I have used sandpaper on fabric, although I'll be honest, it doesn't always work super great. You could also use a sharp utility knife or something, but I'm just using my scissors and I'm just going along the edges, kind of changing how I'm holding it. Now, this house sign would be a great double-sided sign if you wanted to DIY the other side. I was going to, but ran out of time. So we're just going to trim our fabric down, being really careful at the bottom because obviously I need this to lay flat when it's standing up, so I don't want anything getting in the way. I have another one of those fabric leaves from the Dollar Tree, or burlap leaves rather, and it was really like the perfect size to fit on this house. I just did hot glued a little bit at a time. Again, be very careful because it will come through the other side. So I just did a little bit and just dabbed it on gently. And I only did a little bit at a time because it needed to be at a certain angle for it to fit, but it's also very easy to trim down. But I did go ahead and hot glue that because we're going to add some words on top. And because the fabric was so busy, I needed something there to kind of pop. And these words are from Hobby Lobby, and they come in a pack with some natural colored ones and some orange. And I just love the layering, the different textures. I feel like that can make your DIYs look a little bit more high-end, a little bit more store-bought, less homemade, when you just add some of those little subtle details. And I thought that was really nice. So it is a little hard. I don't have a fine tip, like precision point hot glue gun. So I was just trying to get hot glue where I could to get it stick, and then use my little pick tool to pick out any glue while it was still warm. And I love how this one came out. I feel like the burlap leaf added some really nice texture and layering, to the piece, but it also helped the words really pop out. And so that was really fun for me. And see how well these pieces coordinate and look together. Let me know what you think of this fun color combo. This next one is really just using things I had on hand. It's going to be super quick, but I thought I'd just share this idea with you. I had this jar vase thing from, I don't remember where, maybe Hobby Lobby clearance. Some pumpkins from Dollar Tree. I think the acorns are from Hobby Lobby, but Dollar Tree has them as well. These are lights that I got from Dollar Tree. And I just wanted to show you how easy it is to kind of make a little home decor piece. There's no painting, there's no glue involved here. It's really simple. I also had some pine cones in my stash, and I just pulled out some pumpkins and colors that I thought went well together. These pumpkins have different textures. Some are more velvet, some are like more of a knit, waffle knit almost material, and just kind of put the lights down in there and alternated the pumpkins, the pine cones, threw in a few of those acorns, and it's really easy to make a nice home decor piece. This does not take any skill or, any glue, anything permanent. Really easy to do and super fun to do. Here's how it looks a little bit more with the lights off. It's still a little bit bright in there, but anyways, I just thought I'd share this quick idea with you as well. All right, so now I have this acorn. This is from the Dollar Tree. I love it. I think it's pretty. So I left the front and we're just going to do the back side. And so I started out by painting the bottom. I'm using my antique wax because I'm trying to use up what I have. But there's that little square or rectangle there where the sticker was. There's no more stickiness on it, but the antique wax didn't give it the coverage I needed. I know this isn't how you're supposed to use antique wax, but I don't always follow rules. So that's what I did. And I realized it needed another coat. So instead of using more of my antique wax, I dried it down and went in with some paint. I dried it down just to make sure, and I was like, yeah, it's not going to work. So you can see this brown paint is almost done, but ended up being a really good color for this acorn. So I did another coat on the bottom here. Now, I left the stem with just the antique wax because I didn't need that to be the exact same color as the bottom of the acorn. But I just wanted to show you how you could take a Dollar Tree piece or something maybe you find at the thrift store, and you just do a couple little things to change it up. And it doesn't have to be hard or a huge ordeal, but just switch it up. So for the top of the acorn, I thought the texture of the burlap would be great. So I have this light colored burlap, just a little scrap of it, and I'm just tracing out approximately the size that we need. We're going to need to trim it down some more, but I just used my pen to do the kind of the outline. I left the bottom as is, and we'll go back and fix that, trace that out and get that down. So I thought a great way to use up some scrap of burlap. I thought the texture of this was nice. I thought the color contrast was nice, but there's so many different things. My friend Kendra recently did an acorn video. I think it was it called an acorn video, or it had a lot of acorns in it? I'll try to remember link it down below for you, but her channel name is Late Night Creations, and she did lots of different ideas for acorns. So if you want some more, check her out. I love pumpkins, and I feel like you can't really ever have too many pumpkins, but it is nice to have other things like acorns and pine cones and leaves, other things in our fall decor. And I also think it's nice to have some neutral pieces. I love traditional colors when it comes to fall, but it's nice to have some neutrals to mix in there. It's also nice to have some things without words. So, okay, back to the acorn. You can see I got my piece trimmed down and I'm putting Mod Podge. I was careful to only put Mod Podge on the place where I wanted it in case I needed to trim the burlap down again, which I did a little bit, and I didn't want it to accidentally stick where I didn't want it to. So then we're going to do a thick coat of Mod Podge on top to really soak through that burlap. This DIY, I decided to not have any words on because, like I said, sometimes you need a little break from it. I like words, but sometimes I'm like, when I go to decorate, I'm like, okay, everything I have has words. This seems a little busy to put them near each other. So for this one, our first DIYs, I went a little bit more bright and bold, but then I wanted to do a neutral one. But any of these, you can change up any color and theme that you want. If you want to do a little bit more shabby chic, if you want to do a little bit more glam, go ahead and glam it up. you do your style. I do love these little tiny precision scissors from the Dollar Tree. They are a great tool and very helpful for trimming up some things. I use them all of the time. So once that was fully dry, I went ahead and trimmed around the outside there. And then I did go ahead and put some Mod Podge on the bottom or on the rest of the acorn because I just wanted it to have that finish. So I used a matte finish Mod Podge on the rest of it, and that'll just help it last a little longer. But it looked a little boring. So I've got this scrap of the burlap oak leaf, and I wanted to add a little more detail while still keeping it neutral. And I thought, let me trim down this oak leaf piece. You could just use a regular piece of burlap, but I liked this because it's stiffer, so it was a little bit easier to work with and to shape. But you could also put a piece of ribbon. Just again, those layers and the different textures really will help elevate your projects in the most subtle of ways. But I thought that this was a really nice addition to put on the bottom of the cap of the acorn. And then once again, just going to trim that down. But I love how this piece came out. It's a very fun, simple, but also neutral piece, but it's got some detail, it's got some layering, it's got some texture. So even if you go with a neutral palette, there's still a lot of things you can do. You could add a bow on this if you wanted. There's lots of things you can still do to add detail and interest, and I thought that this went well with the other piece that we put together. All right, so for this first one, I'm using this wood block cube from the Dollar Tree. As you can see, I have previously used it for a DIY, and I tend to take apart my DIYs and redo them. Not all of them, but I make a lot because of this channel. So I'm just pulling off the stickers. I'm going to sand it down. Obviously, you wouldn't have to do this if you just get a brand new one, but just wanted to show you that that can be done. And I'm giving it a base coat of Waverly chalk paint in the color ink. Now, my thought behind that was a dark color would cover up like more of the imperfections, but what I wasn't thinking through was that the orange paint I'm going to be using in today's video is in acrylic paint by Apple Barrel, which is a good color, a good paint, but it is a lot thinner than chalk paint. So it took a lot of coats of orange to cover up this black. I was thinking about ordering from another company and trying out some new paint, but I'm going to end up just going to Walmart and picking up some more of their pumpkin I ran out last year. It's a good paint, it's a good color, and it has good coverage. But believe it or not, I ended up getting this little guy here covered. But basically, you're going to take a wood cube and paint it orange or any color of your choice. I'm not partial to just orange pumpkins. But after many coats, we're going to go in with some antique wax. And I'm just going to really dry brush this with a chippy brush just to, you know, I like the different shapes for the pumpkins, but I did want to still kind of give it a little bit of dimension and kind of soften it up and, I don't know, give it more texture. So I'm just kind of going over that. And then I want a stem for this. So I am using a tumbling tower block from the tumbling tower game from Dollar Tree and my miter saw, handsaw, I don't know, is that what this is called? Miter saw box, and I'm going to cut that down. I just eyeballed it, I didn't measure it, and we're just going to cut that down to the size that I want, smooth it off with some sandpaper, and then I wanted to color this, and I'm going to use one of these furniture markers, or furniture repair markers. This is from the Dollar Tree. It came with, I think, in 3 different shades. You could also use antique wax or brown paint or leave it natural. But I wanted to do this, so that's what I'm doing. But this is another great option instead of like stain. And like I said, they came in 3 different shades in a pack from Dollar Tree, so not very expensive at all. Now I'm going in with some Gorilla Glue and some hot glue to glue my stem on. And I knew this, but I didn't think this through. I know that it's harder to glue on waxed items, but I was thinking it was very little wax, the antique wax. Anyways, I had a hard time getting this to stay. You'll see in just a second. And then I'm using, I know people have called this pit berries. That's probably the proper term for this berry. But I think at Dollar Tree, this bundle is called Berry Garland. And they have it in different colors at different times of the year. I'm wrapping it around a paintbrush to just get some little curly cues. And then I was trying to twist it around. This stem came off a couple of times. I'm peeling off the hot glue, trying it again. Basically, I think I ended up just using the Gorilla Glue. And it eventually does hold, but yeah, it's hard to use hot glue when you've got something with some wax on it. And that's all I did for this one. I thought this was really cute, and it's not very big, but it's nice to kind of like mix in with other pumpkins. We have different shapes and sizes and stuff. Speaking of, here's another item. This is from the Dollar Tree. This was not originally that color. I had painted this previously and decided it would make a cute pumpkin. So we're going to paint it again. And I am mixing up my colors. Once again, I am using just apple barrel paint. If I had had the base of the chalk paint in orange, then this would have been better. But it actually didn't take too many coats. And I'm mixing up a yellow, brown, orange. Is that it? Yeah. Until I got this. I wanted more of a, like a pumpkin color. Does that make sense? Anyways, and I go on this pretty thick, but not too thick because I didn't want it to puddle in those little spaces and be hard to dry. And then I'm going to dry it with my heat gun so I can set it down and paint the rest. Now these little ceramic decorative balls, I think is what they're called. Dollar Tree had them many different times. They've had them in like their summer Shores Living line. They've had them just in their regular decor, and they come in different patterns or textures, I guess you could say, but they're all kind of round. So I'm sure you could find something similar. And I did a couple coats of that, and I love this color. It's kind of like a terracotta, kind of, but a little bit deeper. Anyways, I'm going in again with dry brushing with the antique wax, and that'll kind of just emphasize on the ridges. And then I did kind of go like long ways, you'll see in here a second, trying to make it a little bit darker in a couple spots, almost like the ridges of a pumpkin. There I am doing it. It's not super noticeable, but it was just a little bit to give it a little bit, I feel like I say the same words all the time, but like maybe a little more dimension. Anyways, we're going to put that on. And then for the stem on this one, I am taking one of these wood pieces from a pack from the Dollar Tree. I've had them forever, and I'm just cutting off a little bit of that. I was showing you a bag of like scraps that I just keep, a lot of like little leaves off of things, and I just save them, and I'm pulling them out here, giving them a trim, and these are going to be our leaves for this pumpkin. And yep, still trimming it off. And I'm going to glue the tips together here, just, you know, don't burn yourself, but I didn't want the leaves to just lay flat when I glued them down, so curving them, like pinching the bottoms like that, just kind of made them stood up a little bit more. And then I'm going to glue one side down, so you can kind of see that here as it's sticking up. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I enjoy sharing budget-friendly DIYs here on this channel, not just Dollar Tree, but all sorts of different budget-friendly DIYs. Sometimes it's thrifting, sometimes it's clearance finds, but I hope that you consider subscribing before you leave and join my little tiny YouTube family. All right, so more of the glues. This one worked a little bit better, and I just held that down. And then I wanted to add on a little bit of moss, so I'm putting that around the front and the back. This will also add more glue to kind of hold it down, and I'm going to add it in the front and the back, and then I tuck a little bit under the leaves as well to just kind of help it all blend in and keep the leaves sticking up. So I'm doing 3 pumpkins in today's video, but they're all very different. I had a 4th one, but that's going to have to be for another video because I was having trouble figuring out how to complete what vision I had in my head. The glues were not working. So stay tuned. That'll be in another one. If it comes out the way I think it will, though, it's going to be really cute. So anyways, and then I decided, I probably could have done this beforehand, but I'm going in with a tiny bit of antique wax on the leaves. I just didn't want them to look so shiny and plasticky, so I didn't really do a specific pattern, just kind of dirtied them up. And this is how this one turned out. And again, very happy with this one. I use a lot of pumpkins, and in my book, you can't have too many pumpkins when it comes to fall decorating. So for this next one, we're going to use this sign. This is from the Dollar Tree, and frankly, I thought this was pretty cute as is, so we're going to DIY the back and make this a double-sided sign because that one was super cute. I like that it said autumn. I like the traditional colors on it. I like the scarecrow. So we're just going to do the other side. And I'm just using my heat gun to help me get this sticker off. That just kind of loosens up some of the stickerness, that's not a thing, adhesive. And then I'm using a sandpaper to rough up the rest because it did leave some sticky residue behind. And then I'm going to go in with some Waverly chalk paint in the color white and paint the back of this. So I didn't go all the way to the edge because some of the brown that was like naturally on this piece kind of peeked over the edges, and I kind of like that as a border. So I am using an angle brush, and this is very much sped up. I took my time using an angle brush, and you don't have to be a painter. It's not perfect lines. It doesn't have to be perfect lines. And I just went all the way around. Also, when I was painting, I try to paint in the shape of a pumpkin, like following, so if there's any brush strokes, you're like following the curves of the pumpkin, if that makes sense. I did 2 coats of that. And then this is a stencil from Hobby Lobby, $1.99 for 2 stencils. I picked this up last year or the year before, and I'm sure I didn't pay full price, but even $1.99 is not too bad. So definitely look into some stencils. I actually think I'm going to go and see if there's any new ones this year. So in between each one, this one I went a little too heavy on the paint. It had a tiny bit of bleed through, and I thought about starting all over, sanding it and painting it again. Sorry, my head's getting in the way. But I was like, just go with it, Leanne. It's probably going to be fine. And it was. So I'm showing you, I keep some baby wipes with my craft area, and I'm cleaning them off immediately so the paint doesn't dry. And then I'm using my heat gun to dry the leaves in between so I don't accidentally smudge them. You can also use a hairdryer on a cool setting, which I have done before, well, until my hairdryer broke, and then I bought the heat gun. But you can also just wait in between, but you definitely want it to dry so you don't smear anything. So I'm going to go in with a variety of colors. I'm using more of, this is the color I just painted the last pumpkin with, and I had more of it left. So I was like, well, let's not put that to waste. And I wanted, I do like the traditional colors for fall, but I also like anything that's like natural occurring in fall. And depending on where you live, maybe you didn't know that leaves do come in all colors. I'm from upstate New York originally, and we had some beautiful falls up there. You can go to New York, go to upstate, and go during fall foliage season. We would get tour buses and stuff. It's beautiful. Anyway, so you can see I'm just going to keep going with these, layering them all over. In just a second, is that not quite? Just a second, I decided to add in another color. The animals are getting loud. I don't know if you guys can hear all the birds and the insects. I won't know until I play this back. And the wind chimes are starting to go. So I'm sorry, guys, if you're looking for a super uber professional, see, there I am. I'm bringing in some red. I try to be professional what I'm showing you, but I don't have an editor, and I record and film in my real life when I have time. So I hope that you enjoy that and appreciate that. Also, if you do enjoy that and appreciate it, if you like these DIYs, please give this video a thumbs up. That helps me out so very much. It lets YouTube know that you're digging me, and they're more likely to share my videos with other people, which hugely helps me out. So as you can see, I just keep going. I'm layering some of them, overlapping them. And then I took some burnt umber as the color, and I painted the stem. And then I decided to go around the edges, which I didn't really have to do, but I did, and I started, so I finished. But not really necessary. And then I got a little bit of it on the front. Sorry, hang on. We got a plane going by. I made you guys deal with a lot of noises, but I wasn't going to do the plane. But my plan was originally to dry brush with some antique wax on this anyway, so the little bit dark edges didn't bother me, but it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't just, painted the edges, because it didn't need to be painted. But it's okay. I wanted to kind of mute this down a little bit, and you can see I'm doing this in the direction of like the curves of a pumpkin as well. And then once that's dry, I'm sanding down the edges a little bit. I was trying to kind of lighten up where it accidentally got in some paint, but I was also just kind of distressing it a little bit, I suppose. Nothing over the top. And then I wanted to seal this with some Mod Podge. I actually sealed the front as well, even though I didn't do anything to it, just because some of the raised letters were wanting to like pick off a little bit, and I just was like, I'm going to throw some Mod Podge on here and seal that all in. And I'm making a little finger bow with some jute, and I know there's a way to do this with like one piece all together, but I did not have the brain power in this moment to do it that way, so I just took another little piece and tied that little loop in half. But there's lots of videos out there. If you struggle with bows at all, I wouldn't say I don't struggle with them, but I just make it happen. So tied that off, and then I'm going to use my lighter to burn off any fuzzies. You don't have to do that, but I like to do it. I also like the coloring that it kind of gives the bow in places. And we're just going to hot glue that down and trim off the little tails. I put the bow low enough that it couldn't be seen from the other side because I wanted this to be a true reversible side. So as you can see, I did not do anything to the first side, but here is the side I made over, and I love how it came out. First up, I have this banner piece from Hobby Lobby. Originally, it's $4.99. I think everything's 50% off now. I might have gotten it when it was 40% off, but you get, I think, a total of 6 different pieces here. There's pumpkins, acorns, and leaves, and I feel like that's a really good price for some projects. Now, you can, of course, just make over, paint the banner itself, but we're going to take it apart. So I'm pulling off the staples. Happens pretty easily just by lifting up on the rope or the twine, and then I'm just using a tool to just pull out the staples. Some of them went flying, so be careful with that. All right, so we're going to start with the acorns, and I am going to glue 2 of them together just to make it a thicker piece. And I'm just brushing on some Gorilla Wood glue. I didn't want any of the glue to ooze out the side, so I'm brushing it on with a paintbrush so that it's not too thick. Just make sure you clean your paintbrush immediately afterwards with some warm soapy water so that the glue doesn't stick in there and ruin your paintbrush. And then I'm going in with some hot glue as well, and we're just going to put those together, and then I'm going to use these little clip clamps from Dollar Tree. These are very handy to have on hand, and I'm going to use those to just hold it all together while it dries. While that's happening, I am going to sand off. One side does have where the staples were, so I'm just smoothing that out. You can put in some spackling, which I am doing, depending on how, if you make this the back, maybe it doesn't matter to you, but I wanted it to just look complete. So a little lightweight spackling to fill in the holes. Once that's all dry, you'll sand down that spackling, and our glue is all dry. So I took off those clips, and now we have a fresh piece. These pieces are pretty thick to begin with, but I wanted it double thick, which is why I glued 2 together. All right, so let's get to painting our acorn. I'm going to paint our acorn white. I know acorns aren't white, but I've seen acorn decor that is white. And because of what I wanted to put on this, white was just going to work better, but you can paint it whatever color you want. These are some wood pieces. They take to the paint very, very well. I did do, I think, 2 coats, but they take to the paint takes to the wood very, very well. These are some real wood pieces. So I'm doing my best to create a smooth line at the top. We're going to work that all out in the end anyway, but just give that a good coat of paint. Now you can use scrapbook paper, you could use fabric, you can use whatever you want to do your own. I'm just going to be using some paint here, but like I said, go ahead and use whatever you have on hand. Now I have this little scrap piece of wood in my stash that I'm going to make a stand, so I'm going to paint it white, but I wanted to show you that you can also use those wood planks from Dollar Tree and always cut those down if you need to. But this little piece came off of something from the Dollar Tree at some point, and I save everything. So I smoothed it out with my sandpaper, and then I'm just going to paint that white. I just needed a base of some kind because we're going to be making a stand-up sign with that acorn. But use what you want. You can make a stand out of tumbling tower blocks, all sorts of things. When you take a piece apart to make it over, save all of the bits because you just never know. So we're going to give that a coat of paint while my white paintbrush was out, and then I'm just going to use a brown paint that I had in my stash to paint the top of the acorn. I have said in many of my videos recently that I'm working through my stash, and that includes my paint. I've got lots of bottles of paint that just have a little bit of paint left, and I'm trying to finish them so that I can throw them out and of course then start fresh. So at some point I'll be restocking all of my stuff, but right now I'm just trying to use some things up. So luckily I had a brown color that I thought worked really well. Sorry for my head getting in the way here. But once again, I'm just painting on the line. Now, I don't show you me doing this, but I did paint the back side because I wanted everything to look complete from the back. So go ahead and do both sides if you want to do that. And just get the paint all smoothed out because it will dry pretty quickly. It gets absorbed nicely and you don't want any clumps. For the front, I am going to put this ribbon. This is from the Dollar Tree across the front here. I just wanted a little bit of a finishing touch. I wasn't super worried that my line wasn't perfectly smooth. That's not actually why I did this, but it is a nice bonus if you're worried about it being perfectly smooth. On the back side, I did not put the ribbon. I just left it, painted, and that was okay with me because I didn't feel like that was necessary. But we're going to put that down with just a little bit of hot glue and then trim down the edges. And I just thought that this gave a nice little bit of a detail. But it's still very simple. Details don't have to mean like gaudy, although gaudy's fine. Some people like gaudy, and gaudy, sparkly, all the things is great too. But adding those details and the layers just kind of help make it look a little bit nicer. So to stand it up, I'm going to need a tumbling tower block in the back just to help attach this to the base. So I stood it up so I knew the exact placement. I didn't want to just blindly glue it on there. I did want it angled on the side, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to use a little bit of Gorilla Glue and a little bit of hot glue, and we're going to attach the wood block to the acorn, and then we're going to attach the block and the acorn to the base. So I'm doing that pretty much just right away because I wanted to make sure that everything was in the right angle so that the acorn wasn't leaning back or leaning forward, that it all looked the way that I wanted it to. You can see that I left the edges of the acorn as is as well because they were a dark wood and I liked that look, but do with that however you want. So now I'm just going to go in with a little bit of white paint to paint over the tumbling tower block to just, again, make it look a little bit more finished from the back. And it's not necessarily needed, but I like that. And a little bit of the tumbling tower peeked through the front, not much, but I just took a tiny paintbrush and painted that white. Another fun thing from the Dollar Tree, this is a rub-on transfer. I just had to trim off the bottom. There's nothing there, but just so that I could get it in place and have that work nice. So I'm just using my finger to rub this on, and then I eventually grab a tool and use the back side of, like the handle of a tool. But these are, the image shows that it's something that can go on glass, but it can work on anything. Well, I don't know about anything, but it can work on this as well. Anything that you would use a rub-on transfer for, this one will work. And I've had this in my stash for a while, but I believe you can still get these from Dollar Tree. Although I do feel like the seasonal rub-on transfers are hard to come by, but you can buy some at other stores and you can buy some online. You could also just stencil something. But that is it for this first DIY. I like having the acorn, as I said in the beginning. I love pumpkins. I don't feel like you can have too many, but it is nice to switch up your decor. And you can see how I finish out the back of the acorn. Let me know what you think about this one. All right, up next, I have this little house that I have sanded down. I'm pretty sure this is from Dollar General. That was only $1. These are, because it has the stand on the back, and I remember that from Dollar General. Dollar General is a great place to look for some things to make over. They also have really, really good end of season clearance finds. And so I often will buy things like this for 20 cents, 30 cents, sometimes even 10 cents. And I'll just put them in my stash to make over at a future date. So I painted the front and the sides white. I left the back the normal color because I thought that that looked fine. It still looked finished. These are some self-adhesive self-adhesive stencils from the Dollar Tree, and they are excellent. I shared quite a bit about these in another video. I will say this, they are very sticky, and sometimes all of the details in them can make them stick to one another, so it can be a little bit hard to get them in place, but they're pretty durable. So put them down. I did put a little painter's tape, just not because it needed help sticking down, but because I didn't want any paint to go over the edge. I had a little bit of this moss green paint on a paintbrush from another project, and I didn't want to waste it. Because you don't want your stencil brush to have too much paint, I actually thought that this was a great way to get paint on my brush without overloading it. So I'm just dabbing that on the paintbrush. I like to go not too heavy on the paint, and if I have to go over it a couple times, then I will do that, but that way you don't have any bleed through. These stencils can be used again. If you're very careful, you're gonna have to stick them either back on their backing or maybe a piece of wax paper. I was having trouble getting this off, mainly because I was just trying to not dig at the paint. And a little bit of paint got on there, I think when I took the stencil off. Anyways, I love how that came out, but you get many of those in a pack if you get the smaller ones. So I find them to be a great deal and they work really good, especially for the money. This little metal piece that I just painted, this came off of a beaded garland from Dollar Tree. Came with several different of these, actually came with different shapes as well. But anyways, the one I had pumpkins, and so I painted that and did seal that in with a Mod Podge and attached that to the top of this little house. Let me know what you think. I think this is really cute. It's super simple, but adorable. All right, here is another house that I sanded down. I believe this one was from Target in a 3-pack, but I've had this for many, many years. So once again, I'm cleaning up the edges, painting that white just to kind of freshen it up. And then we're going to paint the front and back a different color. We're going to make this one a double-sided sign because I think that's fun. And we're going to use Moss by Waverly. I love this color. I feel like it is a great fall color. I also feel like it is a more muted green that could be used for for Christmas if that's your style. And it also works well for everyday decor. So these shades of greens like Moss and the Celery by Waverly are some of my favorite. You can see it dries down a little bit darker. We're going to use another one of those self-adhesive stencils from the Dollar Tree, and we're going to stencil on with some white paint. So we're going for some color here, but a little bit more neutral, not overdoing it on the orange. I love orange. I just find that sometimes my fall decor has so much orange and so many pumpkins that I need some things to balance it out. I also like to do a lot of things. You can see I did make a little mistake with the white paint, so I'm just going in with a little paintbrush and touching that up with some green. And I'm going to add on a little twine bow. But you know, sometimes I feel like I need to balance things out. Sometimes I have too many words. So sometimes I do DIYs with no words. Today's video is a little bit more wordy, lots of words. But I do also do a lot of DIYs that don't have any words as well. Because sometimes when you go to decorate, you're just like, okay, I've got a little too much of it. But these stencils from Dollar Tree are so great. I love the variety in them. They have them in different shapes, and if you can find them, they're a great find. So once again, gonna touch up where I had a little issue, and I have another one of these metal pumpkins from the beaded garland from the Dollar Tree. We're gonna use some like Gorilla Glue and some hot glue to attach that, focusing on the middle of it because that's where the most contact is on our little house sign. So I love how this one came out. Once again, let me know what you think of this one. I think this is great for a tier tray. Sometimes you can see things from both sides on the tier tray, so it's nice to have both sides looking great. All right, this next DIY, this is a leaf sign from the Dollar Tree. Love this. They have an acorn and a pumpkin. I was going to redo the front side, and I was like, I actually really like the front. So I'm going to just use the back. So this is going to be another double-sided sign. And then you don't have to like sand off all the things. So that is going to be up to you what you want to do. But we're going to give this a good coat of white Waverly chalk paint. I'm trying to not have white paint drip down the sides. Even though it's already white, I didn't want it to, be dripping down. Okay, so this leaf pumpkin. No, this is not a leaf pumpkin. That doesn't even make sense. This is a wood cutout from the Dollar Tree in the shape of a leaf. I filled in the hole with white lightweight spackling, and then I initially painted it white because I was going to use it for a different project, and but I decided to use it on this one, and that was already white. So painted this with Pumpkin by Waverly, and I wanted to just add a little bit of dimension to this, so I broke up a popsicle stick and attached them to the back with some hot glue. Now this is kind of where, for me, the project took a bad turn. The project came out fine, but I got myself with some hot glue pretty bad, I think after this, in this next one. And I had a couple scars. Yep, that's it. That's what's happening. So instead of stopping what I was doing to go get my lavender oil, which always helps tremendously, I decided I needed to just hurry up and finish this project, which left me with some burnt skin. But we're going to, this is why I'm getting a little messy here, so that's why I wanted to explain it. So we're going to attach that on. I like it because it just adds a little bit more dimension, and I did paint the orange leaf with a little bit of white streaks in that, added a little bow at the top of the leaf. I may have done that a little bit differently, but yeah, I was kind of in a rush to finish this up and heal my hand. All right, so I wanted to do something else with this banner from Hobby Lobby. We're going to use one of the leaves this time. This banner was a great find for me because you can do so many projects with just this one piece. So we're going to pull off the staples once again, and I don't think I ended up filling in the holes on this one. I don't know, they didn't look as bad, I guess. I think I just smoothed it out with some sandpaper. And then I'm mixing a couple yellows here. I'm just mixing it right on the piece, and then we're gonna paint it because, well, I think I was trying to get it done quickly. And I also thought that the streaks and more natural blending of the yellows instead of them being purely mixed was actually gonna look nice and give a little bit more dimension to the leaf. But you can just feel free to, mix that on an old lid or paper plate or something and then paint. I wanted kind of the more, not splotchy look, but more textured look. And then in my stash, I found one of these leaves. This is another one of those leaf cutouts that I had previously painted, and I'm apparently almost going to burn myself again. I had previously, I think, painted it with some antique wax, and then the twine, no, what is that? The bow. The bow. What is that made of? Raffia bow with a button. That came in a pack from Hobby Lobby. They have those again this year. I already had this in my stash from something else, so I just glued that on. I thought this was really nice. And we're going to make a little hanging sign. I had seen something like this at a store or online from a store, and it would also be cute as a little stand or attached to something bigger like a wreath, but I decided to make a little hanging sign. So I am just figuring out what angle I want this to hang at, and I'm using some twine here to hot glue that on. Now, I was going to and should have, and I will probably go back and use my heat gun to melt off this hot glue and redo this. The hot glue is fine. It doesn't look as nice, but nobody's really going to see it. But I should have stapled the twine on, but this was right after I had burnt myself, and I was just really trying to hurry up and finish my projects. So you could also use a staple to staple the twine on, or you could always just cover the back of the twine with like a piece of fabric, and that would just make it look a little bit nicer if you're worried about that. But I love how this came out. I think the yellow is a really pretty color, and then the brown on top of it just kind of calms it down a little bit so that it's not, a little too loud. But let me know what you think.
All right, up first I've got one of these styrofoam pumpkins from the Dollar Tree. They have them usually every year. I don't always find the white ones. Sometimes you just find the orange ones, but the white ones are really nice because it's a lot easier to cover up than the orange ones. I'm going in with some apple barrel paint in the color khaki, and we're going to just coat this so that if any of the white peeks or any of the pumpkin itself peeks through, it'll blend in a little bit more. Now, I struggled a little bit initially with this DIY, but I absolutely love how it came out. It came out better than I thought. But because of how I ended up doing this, I probably didn't have to paint it. So I'm using my heat gun to dry it so that I could set it down and paint the top of it. Just use it on a low setting, okay? You don't want to melt your styrofoam. And then I was just using whatever I could find within reach to cut out the top and the bottom. The orange styrofoam pumpkin, the stem just comes right out of the pumpkin, but you would actually still need to cut out a bigger hole anyway. But we're going to do the top and the bottom. It is hollow inside, and I am using this braided rope from Hobby Lobby, and I was really excited to get to use this. It was originally $9.99, but I got it at least 50% off, and I've also used some of it, given some of it away. So anyways, we're going to cut down strips, and I taped them because these strips will come undone. So now here I am just gluing the 3 strands together, and I have my little finger protectors on. So my plan for this was to cover this whole thing with strips of this, but the hot glue, first of all, was kind of melting the inside of the styrofoam because I was using it on the hot setting, and this rope was so stiff that it was just not adhering. I was not getting anywhere with it, and I was kind of bummed because I really, really wanted to do this. Okay, so I kind of walked away from this, and this is why this DIY was supposed to be my last video, but I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So I set it aside and went back to it later. So what I decided to do was kind of combine an idea I had for another pumpkin in with this one. Now this particular ribbon is a thicker ribbon that I bought at Dollar Tree Plus section when it was marked down at the end of a season. But you could also use Dollar Tree's burlap ribbon or just strips of burlap. But I'm cutting off the wired gold edge because I didn't want the wire and I didn't want the gold. And then I'm cutting each strip in half because I wanted smaller strips. So I'm just using what I've got here. I don't mind the frayed rough edges. So now I'm using my glue gun at a lower temp so it won't melt the styrofoam as much, but also the ribbon is lighter and more flexible, and it just sticks, it glued down much easier than the braided ribbon would. So we're gonna do strips of this all around. Sorry, my head often gets in the way of the camera because
I'm trying to look at it straight on, but your view is also straight on. So, okay, so I'm going to just do this all around, going from the top to the bottom. And you do need a slightly bigger, well, I did a big enough hole. You do need the hole this big because it's going to fill up once we add everything we want to add in. So I'm just going to go around, and I just kind of started going like opposite sides, and kind of just kept going until I filled it all out. So you could use any ribbon, or you could use fabric, strips of fabric here, a drop cloth, yeah, all sorts of things. But I think the hollow styrofoam pumpkin is easiest because then you can get inside of it versus just like a plastic pumpkin where you're doing the outside of it. So I do recommend that, but so many different things you can use for the outside. I don't like to paint a false picture of how it goes. Sometimes things do not turn out the way you intend, but usually you can keep going with them and still like what you like what you end up with. So if you're into that kind of thing, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel, be a part of my YouTube family so you don't miss out on my future videos. Subscribing is just YouTube's way of saying like, oh, I want to see her videos again. So, all right, anyways, now we're going to go in with a braided rope. We're not going to do it all the way around, but having the ribbon to glue it to made it so that I could use more hot glue without melting the styrofoam, and it just worked better. I tried the first way, like the original way, for quite a while. I didn't show you all of the footage, and it just was not going to work. So this worked way easier, and I loved the combination with the burlap ribbon. I definitely use a lot of traditional fall colors in my decor, but I also like a lot of neutrals, and so this was kind of fun to throw in a little bit of a different feel and some neutrals so that, I do tend to put out a lot of fall decor, and this way it's not, screaming all the colors in everything. It's, I can mix it up with some neutrals. So as you can see, the hole is definitely getting a little bit full here. I have to put plenty of hot glue there because the strands will come undone. I'm using my finger protectors. I'm using my scissors to hold that in there because it was getting hard to get my finger in there. Whatever you need to do. And I'm just going to go around until I have enough of it. I wasn't really sure how much I was going to do here, but I think I ended up doing 8 strands altogether. And then I wanted to move on to my embellishments. So I have these little wood pieces. These are from the Dollar Tree. At some point they've had various sizes. This was like the smaller ones. The other ones are more like a stump almost. But I got 3 pieces that were about the same length. They're curved, they're not perfect, so I had to just kind of, blend them together so that they could be one bigger piece. And I glued them together so that that would stay really good. And then I also pulled out a bag of scraps. I tend to just keep the leaves and trim and little flowers and whatever when I'm working with florals, and I just have them in a little baggie. And I love the muted tone of the lamb's ear. So I'm going to attach these in here before I add in the stump. And I do tack down the leaf itself with just a little bit of hot glue just to make sure that that lays down the way I want it to. This DIY, you may not like it, and that's okay. My feelings won't be hurt. But this came out so much better than I thought, and it's for sure my favorite of fall so far this year. Now we're going to add in the stump. And I'm just figuring out which direction, because again, these aren't perfectly straight and even. Going in with plenty of hot glue, but making sure that the hot glue isn't where it can be seen. And then I wanted to add one more bit of embellishment. I couldn't decide, and I've had these in my stash forever. And they are these little burlap roses from the Dollar Tree, and I just clipped off the wire. They're on like a wire post here. And I thought that this was just the perfect little embellishment on this pumpkin. I really like how it came out. Sorry for the lighting in all of my final shots. We were in the middle of a storm and I needed to get this finished. So I was using a lamp to add some extra light. So hopefully that's all right for you guys. But let me know what you guys think about that DIY. For this next one, I'm showing you the leaf ornaments is what they're called from Dollar Tree. I had a package of ones from this year, but I also had this leaf left over from last year, and they were a little bit different, but I'm just finishing up the one from last year. And I'm going to give this a good coat of Mod Podge, and then we're going to let that dry. We're just going to make sure you get the like all of the ends and the edges, and not a super thick coat, but a decent coat, because we're going to do the iron-on method with some scrap paper. So this is just, as you can see, a true scrap piece of paper, but I was able to put it in an angle that it fit, cover that with parchment paper, and then I'm using my iron with no steam to reactivate the Mod Podge, and as you can see, it is totally adhered. I'm going to cut away the excess, and then I'm going in. I've used emery boards before to file. This 3-pack from Dollar Tree kind of stinks. I wouldn't recommend it. I have an individual one that I bought from Dollar Tree, and it was definitely much better quality. This one just kept bending and breaking on me, but you just want to use sandpaper is fine. And I'm just going to sand away so that we don't pull the paper back up and get the leaf shape back again with all of those little points. So this took a little bit of time. It wasn't hard, but it took some time. I didn't want to break the wood piece, obviously, because they were very thin, but I wanted my leaf shape. And when you sand it, which is fine, you can see it kind of roughed up the edges a little bit, but I wanted that to be dark again. So I went in with some antique wax, and then I didn't just do the edges. I kind of fanned it over a little bit more than just the edges, and then took a very little bit that was left and went over the whole thing. You could barely even see it, but I just wanted to keep this nice and dark. And then I have this raffia ribbon and this lace ribbon. The lace ribbon is from the Dollar Tree. The raffia ribbon was sent to me from my friend Kendra at Late Night Creations when we did a collab, and we sent each other some items to craft with. I wanted to make a double layered bow. I'm not a bow person, but I tried doing them together and it just wasn't working. So we're going to do it a different way. I'm taking my lace ribbon and I'm just laying it down here crisscrossed. It's not tight or anything. And then I'm going to do a simple shoestring bow with this raffia ribbon. I really do think that's what it's called. I could be wrong. I thought about mixing in that dark brown and white twine that you see there, but I ended up not doing that. And I laid these on top, took a piece of that raffia ribbon and just tied that down the center and made sure it was all even and straight, tied that in a knot in the back, and trimmed off the ends. If you're looking for a good bow tutorial, there are plenty of them on YouTube. I can show you how to do it when you don't know what you're doing because I just don't do them very often, so I don't do a super amazing job. And we're just going to attach this down at the bottom, and I thought in the end it actually came out really cute. And then I'm going to attach this to this burlap square sign. This was also sent to me from Kendra. She sent me so many things when we did that collab that I didn't get to use them all in that video. So I'm still working on them, but you can get these. I actually think Dollar Tree has had some burlap canvases, but Hobby Lobby and Michael's, you can find this kind of thing. And that's it. I just hot glued that on, and I'm just using this as a leaning sign, so there's no stand. There's nothing to hang it with, but you could easily add something if you wanted to do either of those, but I'll just be leaning it up. All right, so our final DIY, I have this vine wreath from Hobby Lobby. I was so bummed that they put the sticker right on it because it's just like cardboard MDF type stuff, and so it was peeling off a layer. So yeah, you can see it. But they put another one on that was just tied on it, which was great. But you can see, I think I only paid $1.67, I think is what it said, on clearance from Hobby Lobby, and I've been wanting to use it for something, and so today's the day. I'm going to take some Waverly chalk paint in the color white, and I really wanted more of an off-white. I didn't want the stark white, so I'm going to mix in some of this khaki from Apple Barrel. I used to have the plaster from Waverly, and I don't have that anymore, and I went to buy some, and they didn't have it, except for like the jumbo bottle, which I didn't want. Anyways, using what I've got. So this took quite a while to paint because, as you can see, there's all of these edges and all underneath the leaves. But I took the time to do it. Don't worry, I'm not going to share all of that with you. But I did the front and all the sides, the insides, the back side, all the things. It really only took one coat. I did a touch up in a couple spots with I wouldn't even say a second coat. I did one coat and then I touched it up in certain areas. And it sucks it up really well, so it dried quick. It's very much of a heavy cardboard material. I do believe that Hobby Lobby has the same design in a wood piece, but this was what was on clearance. So that's what I got. So you can see now I'm doing like the inside sides. So you don't necessarily have to. If you want to leave the edges raw, you could do that, but it's hard for the paint to not get on it. So it's just easier to do the whole thing. And now I'm going in with some antique Waverly wax, and I just have very little of that on my stencil brush, and I'm going around all of the edges, the leaves as well as the center part. I wanted this to kind of stand out and pop a little bit more. I'm also going with a more like neutral and rustic feel here, so I didn't want anything to be super crisp. Plus, all of that added like dimension helps kind of disguise some of the imperfections of this piece. Some things were curved up a little bit, and when I painted it and that was wet, some of that it softened up the material a little bit, so it just wasn't perfect. And so I didn't want to try to act like it was perfect. I just wanted to kind of go with the imperfections. So you can do with that what you will. If you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. That helps me out so much. It lets YouTube know that you're enjoying my video, and it makes them more likely to show my video to other people, which of course helps me out. So like, comment, let me know which one of the DIYs is your favorite. Let me know when you're gonna start working on fall DIYs. I love interacting with you guys in that way. So now I've got this wooden leaf from Dollar Tree. I thought that end was chipped, but it's totally not because it was finished on all of the ends. This was in my stash along with the rub-on transfer from last year, but these I believe are both out again this year. And what I wanted to do was layer this on. We're making like a wreath. I don't know, is it called a wreath if there's not actual florals on it? I don't know. Either way, I was trying to figure out if I wanted the leaf straight up and down or sideways so that I knew how to put this transfer on because I didn't want the words to be sideways. So I decided to just do it straight up and down. These particular transfers are very sticky. I'm going to stick my head here in a minute. Yeah, because I needed to get straight over top because once you push that down, there is no removing it because it's very, very sticky. But it does transfer fairly easily. And so just make sure to pull it up a little bit at a time. And if it has not fully transferred, you can easily set it back down and just rub on that a little bit more. And then I was thinking about how I wanted to hang this, and I often hang stuff on my doors, especially inside my house, with a long piece of ribbon, and I loop it over the top of the door, and I have a command hook on the inside of the door upside down. So I hope that all kind of makes sense to you. So I saw how long I wanted my ribbon to be, and I wanted to get that down first so that I could glue the leaf on top. And as you saw, I just made marks under where the leaf was in contact with a pencil, so I knew where to put the hot glue. Put the hot glue all around this, and then you got to just really hold that wood piece down because they're not perfectly flat. They kind of bow up just a little bit. Sorry, my head just keeps popping in, but you know, I want the DIY to come out good. So now we're going to do another bow. And I have this orange ribbon. This is from Dollar Tree this year. And so these are neutral DIYs with a little bit of muted color. So I just made a loop, and I'm going to hot glue that together. Be careful you don't burn your hands. And then I separately cut the pieces here to be the tail. And I'm going to use some jute twine. I'm going to scrunch down my loop and attach the tails to it. So hopefully that makes sense for you. Going to make sure it is all how I want it and the loops are even before I tighten my knot here. And then we're going to dovetail the ends. And I wasn't super worried about the center of the bow because we're going to add something else on. For these burlap stickers, Dollar Tree has 3 different types of packages for these, and I'm going to use this one. The sticker piece stayed on the packaging, but I was going to hot glue it anyway. So I'm going to hot glue that to the center, and I love this one so much. And then we will hot glue this on top. This will also cover up the hole on top of the wood leaf because I left that natural, so I didn't want to fill it in because you'd still be able to see it. And then that's it. I hung this over my door. Once again, sorry for the lighting. Thunderstorms have been happening a lot lately, and I still have to do my filming, but I show you how it is hung up over the door there.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you are new, and make sure your notification bell is turned on so you don't miss out on my future videos. And of course, say hello down in the comments. Leave me, let's go with like an orange heart emoji if you made it all the way to the end so that I know that you are here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.